Stories that are untold, underreported, and all-out inspirational. Carey Pena reports.
Hey guys, I'm Carey Pena. Thank you so much for listening to Carey Pena Reports on iTunes and Stitcher, and for watching our live feeds on Facebook and YouTube at Inspired Media 360. We focus on interviews with people who have highly inspirational stories to share. And make sure that you subscribe to all of our shows and content at inspiredmedia360.com. In studio with us today is Louis Dolgoff, who took a terrible tragedy and turned it into something really powerful. And at the heart of this story is beer. Not just any old beer, but craft beer.
Exactly.
Louis, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You met and fell in love with the love of your life at what age, 17?
I was 17, she was 16.
Tell me about her.
Well, we met, I was a counselor at a day camp. She was a counselor. I started in the middle of the year, and I got off the bus, and that night the different camps played softball. And she came up to me and said, "You're the new counselor." And I looked at her and I said, "You're wonderful." And we started dating. Dated for 8 years because we were so young. We actually went to college together out west, and we were married for 30 years.
Well, tell me about Lori.
Well, she was amazing. She was store manager of a lot of Saks Fifth Avenues. She was in the retail business, very upscale retail. Just a wonderful person, cared about everybody. Anybody who knew her knew how special she was. We were only here for a short time, and at her funeral, it was so packed that you couldn't even move. And it was just people that knew her for a year. So she was special.
Let's talk about the tragedy that struck your life. And as often happens with tragedies, it's always when you least expect it. You had moved to Phoenix and moved into your dream home.
Correct.
And the two of you just really had an incredible relationship. You had fun together.
Oh, absolutely. And we loved so much of the same things because we grew up together.
Yeah.
So we loved the same types of food. I'm a pescatarian. I've been 32 years. My wife was a pescatarian. So we ate the same things. And we knew nothing about beer till I got involved in the beer business. And she was very particular about beer she drank, and she would only drink one, but it had to be the best beer you could find, otherwise she wouldn't drink it. So we had that love as well, and we had love of I was a tennis pro for 10 years, so she watched me play tournaments and things, and she loved, we would go to tennis tournaments. I mean, we used to say our antennas were lined up.
You guys had the type of marriage that a lot of people aspire to. And when you got here, you wanted to come to Arizona where it's warm and you guys could get outside and enjoy. And then tell me what happened.
Well, my wife was very much into exercise, and she was really in great shape. And one day she came home and she had fallen down and she was all scraped up. And I didn't think anything of it. Then a few months later, she started getting these horrible headaches. And in the middle of the night, she said, "I can't take it anymore." And I said, "Okay, we'll go to emergency room at Banner." And we got there, and they did a CAT scan. And they said, "I don't know how to tell you this, but you have a huge mass in the back of your brain." And I cried uncontrollably for 3 hours. My wife's first thing, she says, "Don't worry, I'll be fine." And she was unbelievably courageous during this period of time. A couple days later, she got operated on from a doctor from Barrow. He said he got as much as he could out, but as many people who've dealt with brain cancer know, if one cell lives, it comes back. And so she had the stage 4 brain tumor. It's called a glioblastoma multiforme. It's the worst tumor known to mankind. And most people live about a year. She lived over 2 years. The first year wasn't bad, but then it steadily went downhill, and she was not able to walk, talk, move, and it was heartbreaking. I mean, to see the person you love most in your life, and you can't do anything to make her better.
I was going to say, take me inside your journey, because this was the love of your life. This beautiful woman who you had been right there by her side for so many years.
I just didn't understand it, how that could happen, to somebody you love so much. And it was so cruel. And all I could think about is she's going to die. she never believed that. She says, don't worry, I'm going to be fine. Don't worry. But in the back of your mind, you realize that the odds are extremely against you that she's going to live much longer. And you're just waiting for that tumor to come back. And when it comes back, it's horrible. So it came back about a year afterwards, and she had 8 tumors. And we went to a clinical trial in Wisconsin. Insurance company wouldn't pay for it, but we still went ahead with it. Didn't work. The doctor told me I can give her another year or she's going to pass away in August. She passed away in August. So I had to kind of put in compartments my thinking and not think about that. And I developed the ability, otherwise I would have gone crazy. And to this day, it's helped me because I frustrate people because I say, this is not important. I went through the worst thing in your life. Unless it's your family, your health, the average daily day is nothing.
This totally changed your perspective.
Absolutely.
And you come from the East Coast, so with all respect, there's a lot of high-strung people in the East Coast where every little thing, if someone cuts you off or
I lived in New York for 5 years.
Traffic,
So that's like...
You flipped the script on that, and now you kind of go through your days with a deep appreciation of just life.
Yeah,
and
because
health.
it's all in your mind, how you choose. You can make it a good day or a bad day. It's how you react to everything in your life. And I choose to make every day a good day. And I'm always looking for the positive, and I'm trying to help people out.
And we're going to talk about how you're doing that, how you took your pain and turned it into purpose. I also want to touch on the fact that it was really special what happened in Lori's final moments. But first, let's back up so people understand sort of how you developed this love of craft beer. Tell me about your friend who developed this big, now very successful craft beer company. And you first started working with them and said, I'll work for beer.
Right. Well, so happened that he wasn't a friend when I first met him, obviously. I just met him. We had gone to a restaurant in Baltimore, and they had a little bar upstairs that had unusual beers. And they were Belgian beers. And I wasn't a big fan of beer, and my wife didn't like beer at all. And we tasted this beer. It was called Chimay, Sin Sense, that was the name of it. It's from Belgium. And it was like, whoa, this is unbelievable. So we go to Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, and we see this place called Dogfish Head Brewery. It's a brew pub. And we walk in there, and this gentleman's standing there, and there's not a person in the place. And I said to him, what do you have? And his beers were amazing. His name is Sam Calzioni, who is world famous now. I mean, he's probably the rock star of the craft beer world. So we were friends. I would help him out at festivals. And then about a year later, I said, Sam, you need help. I'll help you, and I'll work for beer. Mm-hmm. He says, people always ask me that, but I really like you. So we worked hand in hand to build the brewery up, and he was able. I mean, at that time, we would go through a toll booth, and we'd have no money. He had no money, and we'd have to give him a T-shirt. Will you take this T-shirt? Would you put the money in it? So it was a whole story. So I learned the craft beer world from, quote, a master. And I helped open up New York, New Jersey, Southern California, and I always wanted to live in Arizona, so I was able to bring the beer here. But my big specialty was doing events all over the U.S.
Yeah.
Centered around craft beer. And we did a whole series of events called Beer is from Mars, Wine is from Venus. They were beer wine dinners. So I learned the craft, and that's how I got involved. And he still to this day is a supporter of foundation, donates lots of beer for our events.
And now you said he's like a
it's one of the
billion-dollar company now.
Yeah, literally billions. Yeah, and it was the smallest brew pub in America when I first started working with him.
So tell me about the story that you were sharing with me so kindly before we began taping, and you said that when Lori's final days were drawing near, you brought her some craft beer.
Well, it happened to be her birthday. It would have been it was her 55th birthday. And she was in hospice at home, and she's laying in the bed, and brought her friends over, and we had a little kind of party because I knew there wasn't a lot of time left. She knew who everybody was, but she could barely move, and so she had 2 favorite beers. Excuse me. One was called Amort Ale, which was a smoky beer that was about 12%, not your normal beer, and there was a beer called Fort, which was the world's strongest raspberry beer. It was 21% alcohol. So these are very unusual, not something you would think a woman would drink, really, especially in those days of craft beer. And I gave her a sip of the Immordale, and she looked up at me. And then I gave her the Fort, which was her favorite beer, and by far. And she took a sip of it, and her hand was shaking. And I said, "Do you want another one?" And I gave her a sip of that one, and she looked up and closed her eyes and went into her coma, and never regained consciousness until she passed away 9 days later.
What was that like for you, even though you knew it was coming?
Well, you know it's coming, but you never think that day will happen. You hope that won't happen. Some miracle will happen. But she knew. I mean, she lasted till her birthday, and then she had her favorite, and I'm done. Let me go. And it was just so painful. In fact, as I was saying earlier to you before the interview, in the middle of the night, I woke up. I ran over to her bed, and she took her last breath. I mean, we were so in tuned, but I knew that she couldn't. She was very frustrated because she was so active, and it's a horrible disease. I mean, it takes everything that you have, and rather quickly. So it's
in that moment of what I can only imagine is just overwhelming pain, sadness, and not knowing how you're going to be able to go on without this person who's been by your side all these years. How did you start to put your mind into the place of thinking what you could do to empower yourself?
Well, as I mentioned, I had done a lot of events for Dogfish Head, and I couldn't help her anymore, but I could help people with brain cancer, I thought, by doing events, getting people to come to events who normally wouldn't come to a brain cancer event, and help in any way I could. So I got involved with Barrow, who gave amazing care to her here. It's an amazing hospital, amazing people. Got involved with the Phoenix Children's Hospital, which is also another amazing institution. It's, as I mentioned before, it's the number one cancer in kids now.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine, as bad as it was for my wife, I can't imagine seeing your child go through this. So I said, I can do events. The beer world supports me amazingly. I mean, they donate thousands and thousands of dollars of beer every year to us. So we came up with events centered around craft beer, food, and music.
And what has that been like? And how has that helped your soul?
Well, initially it gave me some reason to exist, basically. I left Dogfish 6 months later after Laurie passed away, and I started doing this. And doing events takes a lot of work. So it kept me occupied, and I had great people that helped me. And I could see the reaction to the people who came to the events. Many of them are people that were affected, or friends of people, or actually brain tumor survivors that came. And I said, I can do this. So many of the charities around the country have come to us and said, can we do an event with you because you reach other people that we don't reach?
What has it been like seeing this overwhelming amount of support for you and for your late wife, and just feeling like you're able to give back?
Well, it's amazing. The craft beer world is amazing. We used to always say that it's 99% asshole free. I excuse my language, but everyone knew that one person. But we don't compete against each other. We want people to be able to drink the beer. So automatically the community, unlike other communities, everybody's helping each other.
Louis, I'd be curious to hear from you. You walk through something that is so unimaginable. You were her primary caregiver, and you watched her slide downhill, unable to talk, walk. She passed away in 2009. So for those listening who might be going through something very challenging and not know how they're going to get to tomorrow, what do you say to them?
Well, there are clinical trials now. There are more clinical trials now than there were. So that gives you hope. And so you go through that, and you need that hope. You need something that'll say, well, maybe this will work. Because once you lose hope, then you just sit there and you're waiting for the person to die. And you can't do that because they're still alive, and anything that you can do to help makes you feel better.
Yeah.
And it's important.
And your foundation has given you that. And with the time we have left, I want to talk a little bit about how you have found love again. You gave yourself permission, I would assume, to do that.
Well, it was, I met my current wife, whose name is Laurie as well, which is kind of strange, back about 2 years ago, a year and a half, 2 years ago. So I really didn't do a whole lot for about 5 or 6 years, 7 years. And Laurie was so special, the first Laurie, that it was very hard to find somebody that could be special. But I did find somebody that's amazing. And ironically, she's lost 3 people, her uncle and 2 aunts, to the same type of brain tumor. And I didn't know that when I met her.
So she understands a lot of what you've gone through, and now she's helping with your foundation.
She's amazing. I'm not the most, anybody knows me knows I have a lot of ideas, but I'm not organized. She is extremely
She's the organizer.
Yeah, we couldn't do this without her.
You know, I think it's important to let people know a little bit about the statistics in terms of brain cancer. If you would please share some of what you've learned, because I really did not realize how prevalent this is.
Yeah, I run into so many people who say, oh, my cousin, my brother, my neighbor. It's like I mentioned, it's the number 1 cancer in kids now. It passed leukemia because they've made some progress in leukemia. Males 21 to 39, second most common cancer. And most people who get there's 2 kinds of cancer, primary and secondary. And secondary cancer often happens from lung cancer, breast cancer. It goes to your brain. That's what ends up killing you. So it's much more common than people realize. And it's because they haven't made progress since the 1960s, people live about 2 weeks longer than they did then. It's just so difficult.
What is the words of wisdom or inspiration you'd like to leave the audience with?
Well, the audience is that, in my opinion, is every day is a blessing beyond belief, and you have to enjoy every moment with your loved ones, because it's not going to last forever, and you don't know when that will happen. And that's the greatest joy you can have in your life. So make each day important. Don't waste it, and hug your kids, your parents, your wife, your brother, whatever, because they're the joys of your life, and they're not always going to be here.
Yeah, make each day important. I love that. Louis, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks for everything that you're doing. I mean, you're doing important work, and I got to check out some of those beers. One of your events coming up. You can find more about Louis and all that they are doing at the beersforbrainsfoundation.org. And we want to thank all of you for being with us for Carey Pena Reports. Be sure to subscribe to see all of our shows at inspiredmedia360.com. Today's show produced and engineered by Shannon Hernandez, brought to you by Inspired Media 360. Until next time, stay inspired.